Cato Institute launched, the climate for liberty was harsher than it is today. It was 1977. Communists controlled a third of the world. In the United States, the American people were still hurting from the lasting effects of Vietnam, wage and price controls, Watergate, and stagflation. Cato's purpose is to put proposals into the national policy debate that are consistent with individual liberty, limited government, free markets, and peace. Ideological battle lines appeared to leave little room for a third option. Even the word libertarian was itself poorly understood. Ideas like ending the Federal Reserve or the war on drugs were considered extreme.
When I was first working, I was criticized by some people for being a follower, and I can remember that, and I say, how can they criticize you for liking limited government, economic freedom, and individual liberty? And he said, well, they have some far-out ideas. And I think that's one of the exciting things about Cato. Their far-out ideas become mainstream because they're so intellectually powerful.
In the early 70s, libertarianism was, it was a crackpot idea, and people actually didn't admit that they were libertarians.
Shortly after its founding in San Francisco, the Cato Institute moved to Washington, D.C.
Before Cato came to town, there was no libertarian presence in Washington. When I came for an interview, we hadn't moved into the Waterston House yet, which was our first headquarters on 2nd Street. And it was a little law office. We had a back room without any shades on the window, and it had a iron post bed there with a mattress that was, the stuffing was coming out of it, and that was the interview.
But unlike so many interest groups in our nation's capital, Cato exists not to advocate for government-directed protection or giveaways. Quite the opposite.
We think the essence of America is a respect for the dignity of individual human life, and we think public policy should reflect that dignity and enhance it. And from our perspective, that means less government control over your life. Cato works to develop policy options that expand what we call civil society, the voluntary interaction of individuals, associations, religious groups, businesses, and try to limit political society, which of necessity is coercive.
Cato's work has always focused on making sure that ideas to protect and preserve human freedom have a place in the discussion, whether the powers that be like it or not. Cato has been willing to criticize both parties' office holders when they've tried to take the country in a direction that favors expedience over freedom.
Because of Ed Crane's talent and persistence, the Cato Institute is known and respected for its nonpartisan views.
Unfortunately, most think tanks get semi-captured in the political process. It's a huge temptation because you think you're having impact, but then your ideas are no longer objective. So I think the objectivity and the adherence to our values, no matter what the political winds are blowing, is very unique.
We come down sometimes in the liberal camp and sometimes in the conservative camp. That prevents us from being inside Washingtonians. We are actually outside Washingtonians, even though we are geographically located within the city.
Democrats and Republicans are probably going to rarely agree with Cato's policy positions, but they would be very hard put to find anything wrong in the data that Cato builds its conclusions on. It's the digging for facts, and the digging for facts without prejudice, no alternative facts.
Many people don't realize how broad Cato is in its defense of liberty and wants to box it in as if it's a right-of-center libertarian think tank, when that is not all the case.
Cato is on Team Liberty. It's not on Team Republican, it's not on Team Democrat.
But Cato is also known for being open to supporting a broad range of people who intersect with the Institute for different parts of its core values and mission. Not beholden to politicians, political parties, or government funding, the Cato Institute makes the promotion of distinctly libertarian public policy solutions its fundamental purpose.
I think the Cato Institute really deserves a lot of credit for its leadership in a couple of areas, one of which I was very involved, and that is Social Security privatization.
Transforming Social Security from an eventually insolvent government program to a system of privately owned retirement accounts. That we took from nowhere, no one had thought of this idea, and got as far as the President of the United States' second-term agenda.
Cato's work on the war on drugs, I think, has been very important because they've been able to elevate the costs of the war on drugs alongside of thinking about whatever benefits someone might think.
In 1988, I wrote an article in the New York Times called "Let's Quit the Drug War." It was shortly followed, and I can't say because of, but it was shortly followed by The Economist endorsing legalization, the mayor of Baltimore endorsing legalization, congressional hearings being held on the topic. But the real case in terms of policy and analysis was not being made by very many people.
Mr. Niskanen, is it protectionism of the rankest form?
Yes, it's the worst trade bill that I have seen in many years. It will harm American consumers, it will harm American exporters, it will hurt our foreign affairs with some very important allies, it will probably destroy the prospects for a new trade round, it will hurt American bankers who have foreign loans. There isn't a good thing to be said about it.
Cato is an organization that has always maintained that free trade is part of human dignity and human experience, whereas organizations always thought of it purely as an economic means. Cato sees it as actually human flourishing. And there aren't a lot of groups that still focus on trade.
It truly is wonderful to have and necessary to have an ally such as Cato, which will honestly live up to that statement attributed to Voltaire. I disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it.
Here is an institute that is willing to stand up for the right of every individual to say and do whatever he wants and do his own thing. It sounds very banal, and it should be banal, but unfortunately it's not that simple.
Cato is a great voice for liberty. It stands for free people and free speech, things which it just must have for a strong democracy.
America's treasured Constitution needs to be vigorously defended. An intrusive, overweening government and narrowly focused interest groups have done enormous damage to the struggle for a free society. Throughout its decades-long effort to promote the ideas that animate our founding document, Cato has printed more than 6 million pocket constitutions, including editions in Spanish and Arabic. The founding era of the United States left behind a fragile and decidedly imperfect civil society, but the task of clarifying and promoting the ideas that help freedom take root is the purpose of the Cato Institute.
There are many organizations and individuals that have played important roles in mainstreaming libertarianism, but for that achievement, I always count Cato as the MVP.
Cato really is the mothership.
Cato is the preeminent forerunner advancing liberty in the face of overwhelming government juggernaut.
The fact that they go to lunch and come back and continue this, I think, is a real testament to their patience and truly their courage to continue plugging along in the face of so much difficulty and adversity when it comes to fighting for liberty government.
So Cato is the keeper of the light.
Cato sticks to its guns better than anyone else.
The power of changing where policy is headed in this government is a huge opportunity for Cato. So it's not when we made the greatest impact, it's we are going to make the greatest impact as we move forward.
I'm very proud to be associated with the Cato Institute. It's an organization that has a high level of integrity, with a high level of commitment to ideas with which I agree, and I think it is making a difference against some tough odds.
It is a moral imperative that we follow this example, reclaim our heritage as a free people, and reclaim our right to live in a just society. With Cato's track record over these past 40 years and the outlook for liberty continuing to improve, the Cato Institute will continue to be the foremost champion for human liberty.